Hello and welcome to Midday Report here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Cato. U.S. President Donald Trump's deadline for Russia to end the war in Ukraine or face economic sanctions expires today. It remains unclear, however, how he intends to proceed as new efforts are underway to organize a summit with President Vladimir Putin.
Friday is the deadline President Trump imposed on Vladimir Putin to make progress toward ending hostilities or face more sweeping sanctions. But when asked on Thursday if his deadline would hold, Trump said,
"It's going to be up to him. We're going to see what he has to say. It's going to be up to him." Very disappointed.
Initially, Trump gave Russia 50 days to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine or face additional broad sanctions, including secondary sanctions on countries that buy crude oil or other products from Russia. Last week, Trump shortened the deadline due to what he called a lack of progress.
Thank you very much.
Trump has recently grown increasingly frustrated with Putin and has accused him of duplicity. But the U.S. president is also eager for a peace deal and seems open to hearing out the Russian leader face-to-face. Asked if Putin needed to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in order to meet Trump, the U.S. president replied,
"With him, he doesn't have to agree to meet with Zelensky. Is that what you're saying?"
No, he doesn't. No.
So when do you think that meeting?
They would like to meet with me, and I'll do whatever I can to stop the killing.
The Kremlin says the meeting could happen as early as next week and that a location has been chosen. But the White House responded, saying nothing had been finalized, including the format, date, or location for talks. If the meeting does go ahead, it would be the first held between the presidents of the two countries since 2021, when President Joe Biden met one-on-one with Putin in Geneva. One uncertainty is whether there will be a meeting that includes President Zelensky.
A pause in the conflict in Ukraine could be close, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said following a phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The two leaders discussed the ongoing peace efforts, joint defense production, and Poland's support for Kyiv, as well as Ukraine's EU membership bid.
I just finished a long conversation with President Zelensky about the situation in Ukraine and the upcoming talks. A couple of days ago, I said that there were certain signals, and I also have an intuition that perhaps a freeze in the conflict, I don't want to say the end, but a freeze in the conflict, is closer rather than further away. Today marks Trump's deadline for Russia to end the war in Ukraine. President Zelensky is cautious but optimistic. Ukraine wants Europe, including Poland, to participate in designing this future ceasefire and later peace. We also strongly believe that peace will prevail in our region, as this will also positively impact our security.
Russia's claim that NATO is a threat is, quote, complete bollocks. That's according to Finnish Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen, who discussed the upcoming Trump-Putin meeting in an exclusive interview with TVP World. She also commented on the EU's support for President Zelensky's push for a seat at the negotiating table.
I wouldn't believe any second a Russian narrative, which has been going the past 20 years, that since NATO has been expanding, or the West has more or less come towards its borders, that it would need to protect itself. That is complete bollocks. First of all, NATO, of course, is not threatening Russia. Second, it is the decision of the free people of, say, for instance, Poland, to decide whether they want to join a military alliance or no. Again, not to threaten anybody, but to keep its people safe and to prosper also in the future.
Senior researcher Rihor Nizhnikov from the Finnish Institute of International Affairs says he doesn't see anyone else on the sidelines of the upcoming Trump-Putin meeting. He made the comment during an interview with TVP World, where he discussed the possibility of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky joining the crucial talks.
Well, I think the meeting will take place between Putin and Trump. Putin doesn't want anyone else. He wants to use the opportunity to have an ear of Donald Trump, and Trump wants to do the same. So I don't see anyone else on the sidelines of this meeting. Well, not during the meeting, obviously, and this is the format that has been discussed in May of this year, that basically Ukraine and potentially some other politicians can be in another room, but not really at the meeting. So this is a difference, that Trump meets Putin and then he meets whoever he wants to meet. Putin doesn't mind that.
The funeral of Ukrainian journalist Viktoria Roshina, who died in Russian captivity last year, was held in Kiev on Friday. Throughout her career, Roshina reported from conflict zones in eastern and southern Ukraine, covering topics such as crime and judicial proceedings. She worked with several news outlets, including Ukrainian radio. Roshina was reported missing on August 3, 2023, while traveling through Russian-occupied territory. In April 2024, the Russian Defense Ministry confirmed she was being held in Russia. Her death in captivity became public on October 10th. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky posthumously awarded her the Order of Freedom, recognizing her courage, patriotism and selfless commitment to defending Ukraine's sovereignty and independence. The EU's transaction ban on dozens of additional Russian banks enters into force today as part of the bloc's 18th sanctions package against Russia. The sanctions squeeze comes as Finland's Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen tells TVP World that Europe, with its American allies, needs to strengthen support for Ukraine as it weathers another year of Russian aggression. We're joined live by our EU correspondent Angela Skujins in Brussels. Good afternoon, Angela. Tell us how this transaction ban will bolster Zelensky.
Good afternoon. So all of these sanctions packages spearheaded by the EU aim to drain the Kremlin of its revenues, which is propping up Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, which is grinding into another year. The news today is that 22 new financial institutions have been added to the list. This means that EU operators are banned from directly or indirectly engaging with these banks, bringing the total of that list to 45. But there are three pieces to this EU sanctions package, which was approved in the middle of last month. The first being adding at least 100 more vessels to Russia's shadow fleet, banning the import of crude oil. Hopefully, the third part of the sanctions package is expected to kick in on the 3rd of September, which is the oil price cap mechanism, bringing down that $60 per barrel price cap of Russian seaborne crude oil to 15% less, which will roughly be $47.6 US dollars there. But despite all of these efforts of the EU, we heard Finland's Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen. She told TVP World that while this is a good first step, particularly as the EU aims to synchronize its sanctions efforts with the US, they really need to be strengthened, particularly backdropped by these new developments that US President Donald Trump is pushing for a ceasefire between Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin himself.
I'm in the business of making sure that the future of this world and certainly of Europe is better and more peaceful than it is currently. And the strategy that the European Union, and also together with the United States and some Western allies also around the world, which we have been engaged in over the course of the past months and years, that we have been aiding Ukraine militarily and politically, and that we have put up some sanctions against Russia and its war economy. This is exactly the right one.
It's also important to point out that TVP World did contact the European Commission today regarding the 19th sanctions package. We've heard whispers that work is ongoing there. We want to know what the political thrust of that package is and when it is expected to be delivered to support Ukraine as it weathers another year of Russian aggression. But speaking of sanctions, US President Donald Trump did tout weeks ago that he would impose sanctions on Russia today, August the 8th, if it did not agree to a ceasefire with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. We are still waiting for the details of that to pan out, but we know that US President Donald Trump in recent days threatened to slap 50% import levies on Indian goods, as we know that that country imports a significant amount of Russian crude oil that is not capped with that price cap that I mentioned earlier before. But this is still early days. We'll have to see how that additional sanctions package takes shape, as well as that third tier, particularly the oil price cap mechanism.
Angela Skujins, our EU correspondent, updating us from Brussels. Thank you so much. The migration crisis at the Poland-Belarus border is escalating, with increasingly frequent attacks on Polish border guard officers and migrants even using a portable toilet as a battering ram to break down fences. The frequency and severity of illegal entry attempts have been on the rise, with migrants throwing projectiles, including Molotov cocktails, at border guards and troops. In July, Polish soldiers fired rubber bullets at migrants trying to force entry, resulting in the hospitalization of one Sudanese individual. Poland has been tackling the migration crisis at its border with Belarus since 2021. Warsaw accuses Minsk of orchestrating the situation as part of a hybrid war tactic intended to destabilize both Poland and the EU. Azerbaijan and Armenia could be signing their first ever bilateral declaration on Friday, ending decades of conflict through a peace deal facilitated by the Trump administration. The U.S. is also expected to sign bilateral agreements with the two countries aimed at economic cooperation.
Donald Trump announced that he would host the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan for a, quote, historic peace summit. The U.S. president implied that the deal could bring an end to the conflict between the two countries that lasted nearly 4 decades.
Many leaders have tried to end the war with no success until now, thanks to Trump. My administration has been engaged with both sides for quite some time.
The two nations have been in conflict twice over the contested Nagorno-Karabakh territory, which Azerbaijan recaptured from Armenia in a 2023 offensive, prompting over 100,000 ethnic Armenians to flee.
I left it for whoever will come to live in my house, no matter whether it's an enemy or not. They're a human being. No ordinary human wants war. We don't want to lose our home, but it was an order from the Azerbaijani government.
Azerbaijan and Armenia have held peace talks in the past, including last month in the United Arab Emirates, but no breakthrough has been reached. The peace deal could facilitate the reopening of essential transportation corridors in the South Caucasus that have been closed since the 1990s. Officials speaking to the Associated Press suggested that the agreement would give the U.S. leasing rights to develop the corridor, which would be named Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity.
Local media in Kosovo have reported the country may be heading towards snap elections after a temporary ban on forming a new parliament expired. Since the February 9th poll, MPs have met more than 50 times but have failed to form a new assembly. In late June, Kosovo's constitutional court imposed a 30-day deadline to establish the new parliament. When that failed, it issued a temporary ban on any action leading to its formation. With the ban now expired, both politicians and voters await the court's next move. Politicians around the world are reconsidering their positions on Gaza as well as their relations with Netanyahu. President Trump and British Prime Minister Starmer are both indicating frustration, while Israeli politicians are speaking out against the latest plans of the Israeli military.
In a recent phone call, U.S. President Donald Trump reportedly yelled at Netanyahu, saying that the photos of starving children in Gaza are obviously real, even as Netanyahu insists they are fabrications of Hamas.
The Israeli government's decision to further escalate its offensive in Gaza is wrong, and we urge it to reconsider immediately. Every day, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza worsens, and hostages taken by Hamas are being held in appalling and inhumane conditions. We need a ceasefire now.
In Israel, the Security Cabinet has approved Netanyahu's newest plan to occupy Gaza City. Meanwhile, many members of the Israeli parliament are pushing back, saying that the new plans for occupation will not help the hostages or Israel's relationship with its allies.
And now on to some exciting news for cat lovers. Friday marks International Cat Day, a celebration aimed at raising awareness about felines and finding ways to help and protect them. And on that adorable note, we wrap up Midday Report. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned for more on TVP World. Goodbye.